September 1944, the Allies had just liberated Paris. The world was watching as the war in Europe seemed to be reaching its climax. But in the shadows, a different kind of war was being fought, one that would remain hidden for decades to come. It was a war of secrets, of espionage, and of covert operations that would change the course of history. This is the story of one such mission. A secret World War II operation so dangerous, so sensitive, that it was buried for 80 years, hidden from the prying eyes of historians and the public alike. The mission was codenamed Operation Redstone, and it was conceived in the darkest days of the war. When the Allies were still reeling from the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the brainchild of a group of brilliant and fearless spies, Redstone was designed to infiltrate deep into enemy territory, gather crucial intelligence, and disrupt the Nazi war machine from within. The team consisted of hand-picked operatives, each with their own unique skills and expertise, from demolition experts to cryptographers. As we delve into the story of Operation Redstone, we find ourselves in the midst of a complex web of intrigue and deception. The team, led by a young and charismatic officer named Captain James Hawk Wilson, was tasked with infiltrating Nazi-occupied France and making their way to the heavily fortified city of Strasbourg. Their mission was to gather intelligence on the Nazis' secret V2 rocket program, which was terrorizing London and other Allied cities. The journey was fraught with danger, as the team had to navigate treacherous terrain, avoid enemy patrols, and fight off German soldiers who were determined to capture or kill them. They moved under the cover of darkness, using the shadows to conceal their movements, and relying on the local resistance to provide them with food, shelter, and vital information. As they made their way deeper into enemy territory, the team encountered a young French resistance fighter named Colette, who would become a crucial ally in their mission. Colette was a petite, raven-haired beauty with a fierce determination in her eyes, and she had lost her family to the Nazis' brutal occupation. She joined the resistance at a young age and had been working tirelessly to disrupt the Nazi-s operations in France. Colette's knowledge of the local terrain and her contacts within the resistance proved invaluable to the team, as she guided them through the winding streets of Strasbourg and introduced them to key contacts who provided them with vital information. Together, they uncovered a shocking truth about the Nazis' V2 rocket program, including the location of the secret launch sites and the identities of the key personnel involved. But the team's success was short-lived, as they soon found themselves surrounded by German soldiers who had been tipped off about their presence. A fierce firefight ensued, with the team fighting bravely against overwhelming odds. Captain Wilson was gravely injured in the crossfire, and it seemed as though all was lost. In a desperate bid to save their leader, Colette and the team fought their way out of the city, carrying Captain Wilson to safety. They made their way back to the Allied lines, where they were met with a hero's welcome. But the story of Operation Redstone was not without its costs, as the team had suffered heavy losses and Captain Wilson's injuries would leave him with a permanent limp. The mission was deemed a success, as the intelligence gathered by the team had provided the Allies with a crucial advantage in the war. The V2 rocket program was eventually dismantled, and the Nazis' ability to wage war was significantly diminished. But the story of Operation Redstone remained classified, hidden from the public eye for decades to come. It wasn't until the 1990s when the relevant documents were declassified, a key that the story of Operation Redstone began to emerge. Historians and researchers pored over the records, piecing together the events of that fateful mission. And as they did, they realized that the story of Operation Redstone was not just a story of bravery and sacrifice, but also a testament to the power of human ingenuity and determination. The declassification of Operation Redstone's files revealed something far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. Hidden within the mission reports were references to a secondary objective, one that had been deliberately omitted from all official records. The team hadn't just been sent to gather intelligence on the V2 program. They had been tasked with something far more sinister, something that would have changed the entire narrative of World War II had it become public knowledge. Deep within the archives, researchers discovered a series of coded messages between Captain Wilson and his handlers at the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA. These messages spoke of Package Delta, a mysterious, cargo that the team was supposed to retrieve from a Nazi research facility on the outskirts of Strasbourg. The nature of this package was never explicitly stated, but the level of secrecy surrounding it suggested something of immense importance. As historians dug deeper, they uncovered the testimony of the sole surviving member of Operation Redstone, a radio operator named Thomas "Tommy" Brennan. Now in his 90s, Brennan had kept silent for decades, bound by oaths of secrecy that he had sworn during the war. But with the declassification of the files, he felt compelled to share his story, to set the record straight before it was too late. According to Brennan, Package Delta was not a weapon or a piece of technology, but a person. A German scientist named Dr. Friedrich Kellner, who had been working on a project so revolutionary, so dangerous, that both the Allies and the Nazis were desperate to control it. Kellner had discovered a method of weaponizing a newly discovered element, one that could potentially create a bomb far more powerful than anything the world had ever seen. The implications were staggering. Kellner's research fell into the wrong hands. It could tip the balance of power in the war and potentially lead to the destruction of entire cities. The Allies knew they had to act fast, and Operation Redstone was hastily modified to include the extraction of Dr. Kellner. But Kellner was not a willing participant. He'd been forced to work for the Nazis under threat of death, and he had no love for the Allied cause either. He saw himself as a man of science, above the petty squabbles of nations. And he was determined to keep his research out of the hands of any military power. When the team finally located Kellner in his laboratory, they found a man on the edge of madness. Surrounded by complex equations and bizarre apparatus, Kellner had been working day and night. Driven by a vision of a world transformed by his discovery, refused to come with them, threatening to destroy all his research if they tried to force him. Captain Wilson faced an impossible choice. He could try to persuade Kellner to come willingly, risking the possibility that the scientist would make good on his threat. Or he could use force, potentially losing the very knowledge they had been sent to retrieve. In the end, it was Colette who provided the solution. She approached Kellner not as a soldier or a spy, but as a fellow human being who had suffered under the Nazi regime. She spoke to him of the horrors she had witnessed, of the families torn apart and the lives destroyed. She appealed to his humanity, asking him to consider the consequences of his actions, not just for the war, but for the future of mankind. Slowly, painfully, Kellner began to see the truth of her words. He realized that his research, no matter how pure his intentions, would inevitably be used for destruction. With tears in his eyes, he agreed to come with them, but on one condition. He would share his knowledge with the Allies, but only if they promised to use it for peaceful purposes after the war. The journey back to Allied lines was even more perilous than the journey in.
The Nazis had discovered Kellner's disappearance and had launched a massive manhunt.
The team was forced to split up, Captain Wilson and Colette taking north through the most dangerous route, while the others created diversions to throw off their pursuers.
It was during this escape that the true horror of Kellner's research was revealed. In a moment of desperation, with German soldiers closing in, Kellner produced a small vial from his coat. Inside was a sample of the element he had been working with, substance so unstable that even the slightest impact could cause a devastating explosion. The team watched in horror as Kellner held the vial aloft, threatening to drop it if the Germans came any closer. It was a bluff, but one that worked. The German soldiers, unaware of the true nature of the threat, retreated, allowing the team to make their escape. But the danger was far from over. As they neared the Allied lines, they were ambushed by a group of SS soldiers who had been lying in wait. In the ensuing firefight, the vial was knocked from Kellner's hand, rolling dangerously close to the edge of a cliff.